Today we are here to learn about RBCDSAI and opportunities for BSc Data Science and Programming students from Professor Balaraman Ravindran himself. Ravindran heads the Robert Bosch Center for Data Science and Artificial Intelligence at IIT Madras, one of the leading interdisciplinary AI research centers in India. He is the Mindtree Faculty Fellow and Professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at IIT Madras. He has held visiting positions at the Indian Institute of Science, University of Technology, Sydney, and Google Research. Currently, his research interests span the area of geometric deep learning and reinforcement learning. He has published over 100 papers in premier journals and conferences. His work with students has won multiple Best Paper awards, the most recent being the Best Application Paper at PAK-DD 2021. He received his PhD from the University of Massachusetts Amherst and his master's degree from the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. He is a senior member of the Association for Advancement of AI and an ACM distinguished member. Now, sir, we would like to hear your thoughts on this.
Thank you, Muskan, for that kind introduction. And hello, everyone. I'm just going to start sharing my presentation. I hope people can see it. Muskan, can you confirm whether you can see my presentation?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay. Check. I'm just minimizing all the pop-up windows on my screen before I start. Okay, good. So good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming here to hear about what we do at the Robert Bosch Center for Data Science and AI at IIT Madras. So to start off, right? So the Bosch Center, or rather this whole initiative on interdisciplinary data science research at IIT Madras started back in started back in 2014 as the Interdisciplinary Lab for Data Science, where a group of faculty who are interested in working on something called network science. I'll elaborate on it as we go along. And we kind of got together and started this group back in 2014, 13 faculty across 6 departments. So even back then, it was a very strongly interdisciplinary center. Right? But then 2017, it became the Robert Bosch Center for Data Science and AI with support from Robert Bosch India. Right? And now it spans 12 different departments at IIT Madras, including departments such as biosciences and humanities and management science, and has 32 faculty members who are associated with the center in some form or the other. And over the last 4 years or so, we have produced nearly 140 papers. And now we fund from the center about 32 different projects which are strongly interdisciplinary, right? So it's not just from computer science or any one sub-discipline, but cutting across multiple disciplines. So that's one of the core things, I want you to, grasp from this talk is that data science, right? I know that many of you are part of this online data science program, right? But data science is not something that is that's just a set of mathematical tools, something that you have to really work with people from a particular domain, right? So that's essentially why you see me reiterate so much the interdisciplinarity of the center, right? In looking into more numbers, like I already said, we have 32 faculty, 12 different departments, and we have 80 plus researchers currently, a good fraction of whom are PhD scholars, but we also have multiple opportunities for people to come be associated as research fellows, as interns, and as visiting researchers, and so on and so forth, right? And there are quite a bit of these opportunities that I'll also highlight towards the end of my talk, right? And as I said, we have like 140 publications and about half of those, right? That's about 63 of these are in very high impact venues, right? So, and more importantly, these numbers are without context for most of you, right? So I'm going to talk about some of our research areas, the areas that RBCDSAI works in, right? A very high level, right? And also talk about some of the application areas that we work in, right? So you can see that I put down 4 top level areas that we work in: deep learning, network science, reinforcement learning, and fairer interpretable machine learning. So I'll try to give you a sense of each of these as we go along, right? So let's start off with deep learning, right? So whenever we say a machine is learning, right? So at the core of it, it's a very simple task that we are trying to perform, right? So the machine is trying to learn functions, right, from the input to output, right? So it given some kind of an input, it's supposed to produce an output, but it's not told what the form of the function is, right? If I tell you, y equals sine x, right? Then if I give you an x, you can tell me what y is, right? But instead of that, I'm going to give it to you in the form of these kinds of examples, right? So in this particular instance, so I'm saying that, okay, if you give me this as the input, right, then I want you to tell me it is an airplane, right? If you give me this as an input, I want you to tell me it is a bird, and so on and so forth. So I give you a lot of these examples, right? And then I'm expecting you to learn a mapping, right? So there are many ways in which people have been trying to address these problems, right? Especially this kind of working with image and trying to identify what's there in the image, right? This kind of image classification problem has proved to be very hard to tackle for machines historically, right? So, but people have been trying to work on this problem from at least the 50s, right? So what happened was that okay. So what happened was that about 10 years back, right? So people started exploring this kind of connected computing units, right, which are called neurons, right? So they're basically looking at this kind of really many layered computing units, right? So and then they built together complex architectures such as this convolutional neural network that I put in here, and these essentially operate by extracting more and more. Apologies, so seems to be some problem in getting the slides to change. Right. So by for each of these layers, you remember I was showing you these layers here, right? And each of these layers, sorry. Yeah. So each of these layers, right, start computing progressively more and more, you know, complex features that describe the image. So for example, the first layer just looks at patches of color and edges and so on and so forth. And then subsequent layers start looking at, smaller, more and more complex patterns, right? And then you can see that higher layers start, getting parts of objects, so starts annotating parts of the object, and then finally at the end, right, we're able to put everything together and then start learning functions as to how to label these, right? And is somebody else having control of my slides? It's moving up. Yeah, see, now it went back one more. I just pressed only one back. So, and then I'm not able to control it with my keypad. I have to use some. I have to click there. Something wrong. I don't know what's happening, but anyway, fine. Let's finish the talk. I'll let to sum up, right? So this kind of deep learning architectures, right, allowed people to solve, non-trivial problems. I didn't click on it. And was not. Allows people to solve really non-trivial problems, especially this kind of image classification problem, right? And so back in 2010, people were having almost 30% error, right, on this task, right? And then when deep learning started kicking in, which is about the year 2014, you can see 2012, you can see there's a huge drop in the error rate, right? So from making around 25% error, it came down to around 15%, and eventually deep learning architectures started making fewer errors than a human does on identifying objects in an image. Right? So that kind of kickstarted this whole hoopla. And nowadays, people do a lot of research with these kinds of deep architectures, right? Whether it be processing images, whether it be processing text, audio, other kinds of structured and unstructured data. People have started looking at deep neural networks in a very very deep way, right? And so no AI lab in the world can say that they are doing cutting edge research in AI unless they are looking at deep learning, right? So likewise in RBCDSAI, we do a lot of work in deep learning and related to that computer vision, NLP, and some of the interesting contributions that we have made are, building a Indian language suite that my colleague Dr. Mitesh Kapra has done. And so we're doing significant amount of work in this space, and not just in doing just research papers, but getting out products to the field and working with startups and various companies in order to build solutions based on this kind of deep learning setting. Right? And the next area that I want to talk about is network science. So what do we mean by networks? So networks are nothing but, you can think of them as graphs, right? So graphs that, represent relationships. So if you look at a lot of sources of data in the world, right? So they come in the form of graphs, right? Whether it is, like social networks, where each node in the graph is a user, and friendships or follower relationships form the edges in the graph, or it could be like a transportation network. So that's a snapshot of the Indian Railway network, where each node is a station, and the link between two nodes means that there is a track or there's a train running between those stations, right? And like that, you could look at technological networks, information networks, right, and collaboration networks, who works with who in the offline setting also, and more importantly, in a lot of biological context, right, networks arise, whether it is talking about gene-gene interaction, or whether you're talking about the structure of a molecule that's biologically active, and so on and so forth. So people model it in terms of these kinds of graphs and networks, right? And and these networks can not just model one-on-one interaction. I was telling you that if there are two friends, then there's a connection between them. It could also be like a classroom setting, right? So where there all the students who are taking a single class, right? Every one of you who's doing linear algebra, right? All of you have some kind of relationship among yourselves, right? So these kinds of higher order relationships also can be captured by special forms of graphs. So in RBCDSAI, we study these graphs, and in the various contexts that they appear in, right? Not just in the context of these graphs in computer algorithms, but looking at it in the context of biology, in the context of transportation, in the context of other kinds of interaction thing, right? So we are primarily focused on using what are called graph embedding techniques, right? Where you take a network. You remember I was telling you that we learn a lot of features from. So we learn a lot of features from. Okay, trying to turn off all the other Bluetooth devices to see if this weird behavior will stop. But anyway, so I was telling you that how deep networks learn features from images, right, and then use it for identifying what is there in the picture, right? So like that, you can also take networks and learn features from the networks, right, and see how you can use that for things like identifying what role does a person play, or what subject a person likes, and so on and so forth. All kinds of questions that you can ask on this network, right? So that's something there. And there are many applications that span social networks, collaboration networks, biological networks, language, right? And co-purchase, what are called co-purchase networks, like things on Amazon. So what are things, who bought what together, and then you can analyze that, and so on and so forth, right? So this kind of network appears all over the place, and that's just giving you an example here, right? And again, we do a lot of work in this space of networks, and you can see that the list of faculty would probably be the largest in this, and also they cover multiple departments: CS, biotech, chemical engineering, and so on and so forth, electrical engineering, etc. I thought I had fixed that problem. And the next area that we work on, and something that I have spent a lot of time doing, is something called reinforcement learning. So I was telling you, I started off by telling you that deep learning works with large volumes of data, right? And you know that all this. Somebody comes and tells you, okay, if this is the input, this is the output you have to produce, right? And then you learn a function, right? Instead of somebody telling you, yeah, y equals sine x, somebody says, okay, if this is the x, this is the y, you have to figure out what is the f that takes from x to y, right? So I told you this is usually what you know, machine learning does, and deep learning solves that, and you can also answer these questions on graphs or networks, right? But then if you think of how you learn to cycle, right, that was never done from this kind of data alone, right? And I can give you hours of YouTube video to watch. You're not going to be able to cycle just by watching those videos. You have to try things, right? It has to be trial and error. And so you get some feedback, right? Falling down hurts, or there is an adult with you who's going to clap and say, yeah, well done, beta, or something like that. So that's basically the feedback you're going to get, right? So so that is the only source of feedback you get to learn, right? So in some sense, if you look at the image you know, labeling problem that we spoke about, somebody tells you, okay, if this is the x, this is the y. So if I give you as this as x, you have to produce that as y, right? So I'm giving you this kind of instructions. If this is the input, then you have to give me that output. That instruction is given to you, right? But here in reinforcement, in this kind of learning to cycle, you get only evaluation. So first, I present you with a situation. You have to do something, right? And then you get evaluated for what you did, right? So the mathematical abstraction, right, of this kind of a trial and error learning is what is reinforcement learning. So a lot of situations in which reinforcement learning problems appear, right? And then people have looked at it extensively. In fact, I started off with this example of cycling because many of you might still remember how you learn to cycle, right? Most of you remember how you learn to cycle. But then this is how babies learn to walk, right? This is how babies learn to talk, etc. It's trial and error, right? Nobody actually tells a baby how to form your vocal cord to produce a particular word. The baby just babbles, and whenever the baby says something that sounds like mama, amma, or something like that, people just go crazy, and then it gets all the feedback it wants. And eventually, you know, the reward that it gets is that it manages to communicate its need using language, and therefore it learns to verbalize things, right? So that's how it learns to talk. That's how the babies learn to walk as well, right? So it's a very fundamental mode by which animals and humans learn. Right? Uh, and it appears in a variety of situations. A lot of success stories of reinforcement learning is there. So in the olden avatar of reinforcement learning back in like the 90s and 2000, so you had things like, right, reinforcement learning that learns to fly a helicopter, or reinforcement learning used to control robots, right, or reinforcement learning used in advertising, computational advertising, or in selecting stories and things for you. A lot of success in modern gameplay, right? Reinforcement learning has a lot of success in modern gameplay. But more importantly, RL also has this recent success in solving very complex problems such as protein folding, right? So where you have to figure out what the structure of a protein is, because then only then you know what would be the functionality of a protein, right? And it turns out to be a non-trivial problem. And other situations like power control and try using uh, um, yeah, so using reinforcement learning to actually manage the power consumption in the data center, right? So that reduce power consumption by like 40%. So a lot of situations where you don't know what is the right answer to do, you know what is the right thing to do, but you can recognize the answer when it happens, right? In such situations, reinforcement learning plays a big role, right? And again, we have one of the largest reinforcement learning groups in the country in RBCDSAI, and we work extensively with the industry on various application of RL problems, and also we work on you know, building the fundamental RL theory, not just on the applications. So far I've been talking about all the success stories and everything, right? So typically, you know, when all this modern AI works, we are all very happy, right? But then sometimes AI does crazy stuff like that, right? So you can see this, right? So here it was all nice, right? A person riding a motorcycle on a dirt road, great, right? It's labeling things correctly. But sometimes things like this happen, right? So now it says a skateboarder does a trick on a ramp, but obviously somebody riding a cycle, and it says a little girl in a pink hat is blowing bubbles, right? So I don't know what happened. So in such cases, I really would like to know why it did that, right? And even in cases where it doesn't do crazy things like this, right? I would like to know why the AI made a certain decision, right? So, for example, in things like lending, right, or trying to figure out somebody should get a loan or not. If AI is saying you shouldn't get a loan, I would like to know why it said that, right? So it's crucial being able to explain or even at least being able to interpret what is the answer that the AI gave in such situations. And people actually do things like this, right? Okay, here is the original image, and now I tell you there is a dog in the image. Why did you tell me it is a dog, right? And then the AI says, okay, these pixels made me say it's a dog, right? That's basically it. And then how you interpret that to understand whether the AI is doing something good or wrong is still an open question. And this for the images it is fine, but now if I start talking about loan decisions, it's becoming more tricky. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in order to make the AI ready to go out, to face a human who is going to be affected by the decisions of the AI, right? And that shows up in a variety of different settings. So here is an example of from the bail decision program that I was telling you about, right? So it looked at two people and said that the guy on the left is a low risk offender and the girl on the right is a high risk offender, right? So don't give her bail because she's likely to commit a crime, while the guy on the left is not. Right? But then you go and look at what these people have done, right? So the guy on the left had two armed robberies, attempted armed robbery, and after they left him free, he went and robbed, so was involved in a grand theft, right? While the girl on the right was like had four juvenile misdemeanors, very minor that they have not even recorded, and after she was released, she committed no further offense, even though the AI thought she was at high risk, right? So this notion of fairness again comes into play here. Right? So and so obviously the AI is not going to be explained why it did this. If it's going to give an explanation, it's probably going to say the person on the right was African American, therefore was at high risk, right? But then this whole idea of AI's decision being fair, right, is still a moot question, right? So a lot of work that is happening in that space, right? And so here is another example. So Amazon scraps a secret AI recruiting tool that showed bias against women. So that's again another important challenge that we have to address because women were underrepresented. So it didn't learn how to process women applicants properly. Right? So this raises serious ethical questions, right? So AI sending people to jail and getting it wrong, right? And AI thinking everybody is white because it takes a picture of Obama and converts that to a white person, right? And all these kinds of issues arise. So fairness, ethics and interpretability has become a big area of research in AI, and obviously RBCDSAI also does a lot of work in this. And in fact, we are looking at questions that are very specific for AI ethics in the Indian context. And so that's another area that I'm looking at. So I basically outlined four major areas that we work in: deep learning, network analytics or network science, reinforcement learning, and as well as fairness, ethics, and interpretability of AI. So these are more research areas. You can come to our webpage and know more about the kind of papers that we publish and the projects that are being run in this space, right? Then we work on multiple applied problems as well, right? So we work in four verticals in some sense. So we look at problems in manufacturing, where we work with companies in order to look at building what are called digital twins. The digital twins are essentially, you can think of them as computer simulations of physical systems that are as closely replicating the behavior of the physical system as possible. Right. So quite often people look at the physics behind these systems. Maybe it could be a boiler, it could be some engine. You're looking at the physics behind the systems and then trying to build a simulation of it. But then when you actually start talking about physical equations, you are making approximations, right? So when you make these approximations and then you build simulations from that, they are going to start deviating from the real system, right? So what we do typically is, use machine learning and AI techniques, right, or data science techniques in order to correct for those deviations. Instead of building the entire model from scratch, we take models that are built with knowledge of the first principles, right? And then correct these models by adding AI on top of it, right? And these work much better than trying to build a model completely from scratch. So that's one line of work that we do in manufacturing, and like that we work with many big manufacturing companies in order to solve very hard real problems, right? And the second vertical we work in is financial analytics. And in fact, a lot of collaboration happens with the American Express Lab for Data Analytics, Risk and Technology, which is primarily focused on the financial domain and understanding, customer behavior and things like that. So we build, risk models for, say, the Indian population, right? So in fact, I jokingly say that, somebody comes and offers as collateral 2 cows, right? Most of the Western models don't know what to do with it, right? So we have to actually look at it from the Indian lens, right? And then figure out what does it really mean, right? And so we are building all these kinds of models. We work extensively with banks and both Indian and foreign banking organizations, and as well as multiple non-profits in order to work in this space, right? And then the third vertical that we do a lot of work in fact, it's become so vast, I should probably start talking about it as two different verticals. It's on systems biology and healthcare, and we work closely with IBSC, which is Center for Integrative Biology and Systems Medicine at IIT Madras, and we look at a lot of what is called omic analysis. In fact, many of the network-related things I was telling you about, right? So, are typically done in collaboration with IBSC on for the biological data. So we can look at gene-gene interactions, we can look at molecular structure, right, and all these kinds of things. So that's one part of it, the systems biology part of it, and we also do a lot of work in the clinical data analysis and trying to build things like models for estimating the age of a fetus, right, and trying to figure out when the birth would be premature. So that's another interesting problem called Garbini that we are working on. It's had significant impact and across the board, right? So there are a lot of work that we do. In fact, you can come to our webpage. There are a lot of, in fact, easily accessible blogs written about some of the biosciences work that we do, and so that you can read. I mean, you don't even have to understand neither the biology nor the data science to completely appreciate the impact of the work, right? And we also do a lot of work in smart cities. We collaborate with the Center of Excellence in Urban Transportation here in IITM, and also with a couple of other centers that work in the smart city space, right? So large fraction of our work is on smart mobility, traffic modeling and analysis, but we also look at things like pollution and construction management and water distribution, power grids, managing power grids, and looking at connected vehicles, and all of these areas also are of interest for RBCDSAI. Again, we work with multiple organizations, automotive manufacturing bodies, and the Smart City Corporation of Chennai and so on. So that's basically the work that we do in the application verticals. Again, I urge you to look at the center, and a lot more space there, right? And then we look at a whole new research focus that has developed over the past year for the center, which is on looking at something called deployable AI. Right. So because we work so extensively in both the fundamental side and as well as working with companies and other people who are interested in taking the AI to the ground, right? So a lot of interesting challenges come up, right? So we have a kind of focusing on research topics that need to be solved before AI can actually go out into the real world and be deployed at various instances. So each of these, I mean, some of these are more general questions, and some of these are questions that are very specific to the domain in which you are deploying the AI, right? So it could be societal challenges, trust, privacy-related challenges, and how do I trust the system, like both ethics, fairness, business. And there are some data-centric challenges. Where do I get the data from? What do I do if the data quality is not great, and so on and so forth. And then there are organizational challenges, right, and as well as actual implementation, like hardware system level challenges as well, right? And there are multiple projects that we are that are ongoing at RBCDSAI, which are like AI and ethics for the Indian context, looking at interpretable models for humans, especially in healthcare, right? And also looking at incorporating some information that you already know about the system. How do I take that into an AI model? So there are many projects that we have been looking at. So like I said, we have extensive network of collaborators, and you see a sampler here, right? And so this covers both Indian companies, foreign companies, and government organizations, NGOs, and all that, right? And of course, our collaborations span the globe. And so, like I was mentioning earlier, not only do we do interesting work, but it's also getting recognized now worldwide in terms of best paper awards at various conferences, right? And some of the top conferences as well, some top journals. And we're also having good social impact. I already mentioned to you about the Garbini project, right? Where we are using Indian data to build preterm birth categorization, right? But we also work with the 108 ambulance service, the emergency response service in Chennai, and we work with some organizations like the Dwara Trust on predicting low-income families' financial distress, because they don't typically manifest itself in the classical ways. So we have to figure out other surrogate ways in which you can measure financial distress. And we work on with Arman on predicting the risk of expectant mothers dropping out of a healthcare program, like education program, right? And likewise, we do a lot of work with other government bodies as well, right? Again, like I said, many of these social good projects you can read about in our blogs. And RBCDSAI not only does research, but also contributes back in terms of tool sets, toolkits and data sets to the community. And you can look at our GitHub repository for accessing some of these things that we are putting out, right? So there are some data sets on traffic, right? And then the data sets on language, Indian language, and then there is data sets on various genetic phenomenon, right? As well as some toolkits on, and all of these like NV driver and NetGenes also comes with its own APIs and tools, right? And also some other toolkits that are on their way out. And we also work on trying to build standardized data repositories in collaboration with Google and as well as with the government in getting public data accessible to people in a form that is easy to process and do data analytics on, do machine learning on, derive insights on, and so on and so forth, right? Very recently, this National Data Analytics Portal actually ran a competition for some selected college kids. I mean, so we'll get them to start inviting the online BSc students once we have more people who have completed the diploma as well, to participate in this, like looking at whatever data sets are available on the data analytics portal and trying to see, propose different interesting analysis that can be done. So that should be something for you to watch out for in the coming years. Right. And we work, like I said, we work extensively with industry. So we have an industry consortium where industry partners come and participate in all kinds of activities that happen at RBCDSAI. And we have this very interesting interdisciplinary dual degree program in data science that we run for IITM students, right? It's a 5-year program. So they get a BTech in any discipline, but they also get an MTech in data science, right? And so they have a lot of opportunities to interface with the industry during this program. And people come from different branches. So we have people who had a BTech in mechanical engineering and an MTech in data science and across the board, right? So there is this interesting program that we run. So I'm also going to talk about a bunch of resources and other programs that we have that could be of interest to you. So I know many of you have looked at online courses. Apart from this BSc program, we also looked at online courses from NPTEL, right? So many of the data science related courses taught by RBCDSAI faculty, right? They are available on our web page, but we provide a slightly more detailed interface for them with all kinds of annotations and contents and other things that make it easier to navigate the course. So for example, you can see here a bunch of keywords that have been popped up as content, and you click on any one of this, it will tell you where in the video, in that particular video, is this word being mentioned, right? And so we are partnering with a company called VideoKen to produce this kind of annotated videos. That's something which you can check out if you are looking for some of these courses, right? And there are many events, many talks, right? Many workshops that happen at RBCDSI, right? And so going forward, we will be, announcing whichever workshops we think are appropriate for the students, whichever event is appropriate for students. We will be announcing these, and you can join the live stream of those and listen to these talks, right? I mean, it varies from industry practitioners talking about how AI is used in the industry to recent award winners who talk about their fundamental work. Okay. And so on. So then also talking about somebody mentioned the best application paper in BA Kennedy, so having a presentation on that and spotlight on the various work that we do. And so summer internship program is open, right? And so I think this year might be too early for some of the people who are only doing the online BSc program to apply. But if there are students who are, in their third year in the undergraduate program, or the second year, first year in a postgraduate program, you can happily apply to this summer internship. Just check our website for details of this. But I think it's closing very soon, so you should apply quickly, right? And so then we have an innovative thing called the post-baccalaureate fellowship. This is typically for people who have finished their undergrad or finished their masters, right? And so they can explore, or they can be part of RBCDSAI, and they undertake independent research projects. It's not like they have to work on something that faculty tells them. Right? And we had some very interesting alumni from this program, and almost all of them have gone on to careers in data science. Either they've gone on to grad school and doing a PhD in AI and data science, or have gone on to a career in data science. Right. So again, this program is open now, and there are two versions of it. When you can apply for the regular post-baccalaureate fellowship, right? But we also have a post-baccalaureate fellowship for women. So applications are open now, and if people are eligible for it, do apply. So don't apply if you are in the second year or third year for this program, because it's a full-time job, right? And so that's another opportunity for people to work with us. And of course, obviously, we have post-baccalaureate fellowship. We need to have postdoctoral fellowships, and that we do. And please check our website. I don't think there'll be a great audience here for this, but just to mention that it's there, right? And then there's something that's interesting that we are doing along with the online BSc program. So where we are actually started giving out teaching fellowships for people to join RBCDSAI, do research at RBCDSAI, at the same time also help with teaching, become a mentor or an instructor for the online BSc program. So if there are people here who would qualify to this, either it can be as a post-baccalaureate level, or it could be at a postdoctoral level. Again, details are all up on our webpage. I encourage you to look at it, right? And so thank you. If you like I said, right? So we are on social media, we are on the web, and so feel free to check us out and free to take questions.
Thank you so much, sir, for such a great event. It was very insightful and detail of everything, and it also gives us a new platform for new opportunities. So, if anyone has any question, they can post in the chat box.
Open the chat box. Oh man, okay. Open the chat box.
Sir, there is someone who wants to ask that how can they start their career as a fresher in data science?
Uh, how can they start their career as a fresher in data science? See, first of all, it's not entirely clear to me at what level you're asking about. I mean, are you asking how do I get started, learning data science, or how do I? I mean, I have learned data science. I have done my online BSc program. What do I do next? It's not clear to me. So, if you're asking about, hey, I've done my online BSc program, and now what is next? Well, it depends on what you want to do. And the way we have designed the program, right? It's tailored to make you a fully credentialed data science professional at the end of the 3 years, right? So you should have no difficulty, getting into a data science job, and if that is the way that you want to pursue, right? And the program also, gives you the right fundamentals if you are inclined to, go for higher studies in data science as well. So look, if you're interested in looking for a master's, again, the program does give you the tools that are needed, right? So that way, if you've completed the program, I mean, it's up to you. You can choose the pathway you want to go. Go to the industry as a practitioner, and then come back and study a little bit more and improve your qualifications, or just go ahead and go for a higher studies program. On the other hand, if you're asking me, how do I get started in terms of studying to be a data scientist, right? Uh, hey, come on. What kind of skills are expected while applying to the post-bac program? Is it the same person who was asking me about this?
It is from YouTube. So,
Oh, it's from YouTube. Okay, fine. So if you are starting out and you want to know what to do to get into data science, right? One thing is, of course, enroll in the online BSc program. So suppose you don't want to commit to that, then there are a lot of material out there, right? So if you already have some good exposure to programming and good exposure to some of the the problem settings that people talk about, right? There are ways in which you can start off by looking at these online course material, whether it's from NPTEL or whether it's from other sources. There are enough material out there for you to start learning, right? If you want to become a good data scientist, there are a set of courses that I would recommend that you should do. In fact, like earlier, I used to have to do this to people, right? I had to give a list of courses that they have to take, right? Now you can just go and look at the courses that you need to complete to earn a diploma in data science in the online BSc program. One of the two diplomas, right? You have one in programming and one in data science, right? Look at this list of courses that you have to do to get get a diploma in data science, and that, I mean, regardless of whether you do it through the online BSc program or whether you go out and find other material to do it from, those are the minimal set of courses that you need to do to become a good data scientist, right?
Yeah.
So that's my answer to that question.
So someone is asking, is there any age limit to the internships and all
So
and the
is there any what?
opportunities? Is there any age limit to the opportunities of all these opportunities which you mentioned earlier?
Uh, Age limit to these opportunities. Of course, yes. I mean, upper age, right?
Yes, yes, upper
Applying this
age.
online basic program. I have to check with that, right? Because many of the students are just out of school. So you're asking about an upper age or lower age. There is an upper age limit, especially for the post-baccalaureate program. I think the upper limit is 27 years as of this June or something, as of the coming June. You shouldn't be more than 27, and it's, I think, 28 or 29 if you're applying for the women program. And for all of the programs, they're open to both men and women, except the women post-bac program. The only difference between the regular post-bac program and the women post-bac program is actually because women are, typically are fighting a lonely battle in technology, right? So what we do with the women post-bac program is that we arrange for mentors, both from the industry and from academia, women mentors, to come and meet with these the post-bac fellows and have conversations with them, and also answer their questions about surviving as a woman in the technology field and things like that. So that's kind of a little bit of an additional assistance, right, in terms of being a woman and making it in the technology field, right? So that is one of the reasons we have a special fellowship for women, nothing else. Otherwise, everything else, as far as the benefits, the qualification norms we applied, all of these are same, right? uh, and so the age limit is there. If you ask about engineering versus non-engineering, I saw one query about somebody who's doing a BSc honors in mathematics, right? And it's fine, you can apply, right? So you can apply even with the math background. The only challenge is that for the internships and for the fellowships, right, we do give you a coding challenge. You have to get through the programming challenge before you can before we will interview you. Right. So if your programming skills are very poor, then you won't be able to make it through the coding challenge. So even if you have a math background, getting through that is important. So it's not like super fancy computer programming or anything, but you should know how to get through that, right? So for 3-year degrees is a little bit of a challenge for the online BSc students, right? So we are going to open up the internships for anybody who has completed the first two diplomas, right? So that would typically mean you would have done 2 years in the program, right? But since it's our own program and we know what we are teaching, so we are opening that up, right? If it's a 2-year degree elsewhere, we'll have to take a call, right? So you could write to us. We might ask you details about your, for example, CMI's 3-year degree. We're happy, right? We're happy to take people for internships from there. If it's a 3-year degree from elsewhere, you'll have to apply, write to us and check with us, right? So I wouldn't close it down, but I also won't throw it open. So you have to check with us.
Yes.
And you have to tell me, I mean, the questions have just been scrolling up too fast. I can't keep up with it. So read a few interesting questions to me.
Okay. Someone is asking what kind of skill sets they can expect when applying for post-bac program.
Post-baccalaureate program.
Post-bac program. Post-bac.
What kind of skill sets do you expect? do you mean by that? So, okay, so we asked people to, okay, I'll tell you what the selection process is, and then you take your call, right? So the first thing is we expect you to write a meaningful statement of purpose, right? So you need to write something that's just like you are applying for, a graduate school abroad, right? So you write statement of purpose, which kind of outlines why is it that you want to do this program, why is it you want to do research, and if there are any particular faculty or a particular project in the center that interests you, or if you have done any interesting projects in the past, right? So we take the statement of purpose very seriously, right? In fact, we have relaxed people who have written stellar statement of purpose. We have relaxed even the marks requirements for them to get it, right? So that's one thing. The second thing is we look at the coding challenge, right? So you have to go through a programming round, and if you do well in the programming round, only then you progress to the next round. So after the programming round is done, the next round is a technical interview. So we ask you questions on the fundamentals of machine learning, like things like, can you do you understand regression, and very simple questions, right? So nothing that a person who has gone through the online BSc program won't ace, right? So it's easy enough. But these are like basic fundamental questions in machine learning. So, and only then after that you actually have an interview with the faculty member. Right, so this is, so the interns don't interns basically do the programming challenge and have a very minimal technical interview, and then we select the interns. But with the postbaccalaureate fellows, we have the statement of purpose is the first screening, and the next the programming, and next you have the technical interview, and then you have an interview with a set of faculty members, and you choose which faculty member you want to apply to, right? Who you would like to be a mentor for you in the postbaccalaureate program, and then you basically get interviewed by that set of faculty. I mean, you can choose 1, 2, 3, how many you want, and then you get interviewed by them. And periodically we put out special calls, right? For example, we had a large COVID data analytics project where we put out a call for postbaccalaureate fellows in the COVID to join the COVID project, right? So that in such a case, then you might get interviewed by another panel that's working on the COVID project, right? So, but if you're asking skill sets, programming and fundamentals of machine learning are two things, important things.
Okay, that's good. Okay, as there is upper age limit in the applying, so what can
For the upper
what
age limit is for the postbaccalaureate fellowships and the internships, right?
okay.
So, as
So
a postdoc, the upper age limit is fairly uh, wide, I think. Yeah, can be up to 30 or something. Yeah.
some people are asking that there are people who say that there are no jobs for fresher in data science. Can you say something about that?
Oh man, that is a hard question to answer, and I'm not sure. See, um, there are too many programs out there, right, that claim that they are producing data scientists. In fact, they don't give a good background in math. I mean, they basically teach you like 1 or 2 tools, how to use those tools to solve regression problems, and they say, oh, we teach you how to identify people from photographs or something like that. And there's like just like one simple setting of a tool, and then you give it a data set, you run it, and the output comes something. And so that's not really training you to be a data scientist, right? This basically gives you some kind of minimal hacking skills in putting together a data science solution, right? It doesn't really make you a data scientist, right? And so what you really need is a program like this online basic program, or a more rigorous training like we provide with our data science masters, right? Where you get a good grounding in the fundamentals of math, and you're able to understand and interpret domain specific problems, right? In the context of data science, right? So what is a data science issue here, and so on and so forth. So once you get this kind of a rounded data science profile, those are the kind of people the industry is looking for, right? Industries now has its fill of these data hackers, right? I mean, the people who can just run a little bit on um, know how to do three tools, right? And then if you tell them what is a machine learning problem you want to solve, they can solve classification, they can solve regression, and basically that's it. Right? Those kinds of skill sets, right? I think that those are saturating the industry, and people are not really interested. So if you want to be a data scientist and look for jobs, make sure that you are a rounded data scientist. So if you're going out of this online BC program, I think you have not much to worry about. But yeah, the industry landscape is a fast evolving one. But I think if you have the right fundamentals, you should be fine.
Thank you, sir. That will help us to increase our career. Our next question is, after learning about the algorithms of machine learning, what kind of projects or research topics should we try to address as a beginner?
Oh man. So there are many interesting problems that are out there. But if you want to do research, right, just after you understand the fundamentals of data science, by maybe doing the first year course or something like that, it's challenging for you to do it independently. You really need to have some kind of a mentor, right? And so I would strongly recommend after you finish both your programming and your data science diplomas to strongly look for internships, whether it is at IIT Madras itself or internships elsewhere, right? So we are talking to a lot of other partner institutes who are happy to open up internships for online BSc students, right? So we'll hopefully there'll be a lot more opportunities. So I would strongly recommend doing this kind of a research internship, right? That will give you the exposure you need. And if you try to independently get into research after just running the fundamentals of ML or fundamentals of data science, it's going to be a hard slog.
Mm,
I mean, there is no one size fits all answer to these kinds of questions. So if I give you this kind of generalist answers, don't be disappointed. But that's the truth. You have to look for an internship.
yeah. Yes. So some people are asking that there is an option of give rank there, but they don't have any rank. So can they
Sorry,
apply for
is there an option of?
of giving your rank in the form of internship, summer internship?
No. If you don't have a rank, it's fine. If you have a rank, it's optional. You don't have to fill it in.
Mm.
The internships at RBCDSAI, just one question just popped up. How long are the internships at RBCDSAI? They vary, right? We have internships that run for 8 weeks, and we have things that run for 6 months also. I mean, you have to look at, so for our internships are not just you apply for an internship. There are projects that are listed on the webpage. You apply to a specific project, and each project will have varying durations of internship. So you can apply to those based on that. But you have to, I mean, if you are only in the online BSc program, you need to have 2 diplomas before you can apply, right? And if you are also doing an additional program elsewhere, you can apply if you finish 3 years.
Okay, some people are asking that in screening round in programming exam, there is it related to machine learning or problem solving? Like which is
The
it?
programming exam, it's machine learning.
Okay.
It's but very fundamental ML things. You can easily crack it. I mean, you don't have to be an expert in ML to solve that. So I'd like to answer this one question. I'm a chartered accountant with 20 plus years experience in software solutions. So basically, the question is, are there options for postgraduates in data science and RBCDSAI, right? So the post-baccalaureate fellowships, ironically, even though it's named post-baccalaureate fellowships, is also open for people with a master's degree, right? But um, there is an age limit to it, right? If you have 20 plus experience, it's going to be a little challenging. Why don't you write to me, KV, and then we can figure it out, right? The internship is currently planned to be offline, but we are happy to consider online mode as well. I mean, if there are something that prevents you from traveling offline, but the only condition is that you should commit time to the internship. You can't be doing something else and then say that I'll do the internship online. Yeah, so I mean, we do have some kind of a minimum bar on GPA. I will not tell you what it is, but if you write a good SOP, a good SOP, then we will waive that. So think about that, right? We do Letters of recommendations are not mandatory. Somebody is asking, do I need a letter of recommendation? Letters of recommendation are not mandatory for the post-bac programs. Only for the postdoctoral fellowship, letters of recommendation is mandatory. For the other programs, we don't need it. Yeah, so applying for an MS at IIT Madras after 3 years, right now, no, but that might change down the line. I don't know. But right now, regulations say you need to have at least a 4-year degree before applying for MS, or you should have done a BSc, MSc somewhere, and then you can apply for an MS in an engineering discipline. The questions are not interesting. That I got so many questions. Yeah. So the rank in your college and letter of recommendation should be optional. So somebody can very quickly try it out on the web page and tell me if it is mandatory, then I'll change the form. Okay, somebody is asking me the lack of coding and software tooling is the biggest stumbling block in AI in India. Will you agree? Yeah. A lack of AI skills also, but all of it altogether, system development skills are poor in India. That's one of the biggest challenges. We're hoping to address this through this program.
So somebody is asking, is this open source contribution mandatory in this?
Nothing is mandatory. It is mandatory. What is mandatory? Oh, LOR is mandatory? For what program are you applying? It's
It is asked open source contribution mandatory. It's just asking that.
It's not. It's not. Open source contribution is not mandatory.
And so rank is mandatory there in the form.
Rank is mandatory in the internship form. Okay, I'll ask them to change it. But if you're only doing the online BSc program, you cannot apply for the internship until you finish both your first 2 diplomas, right? Both the programming and the data science diploma. So it's currently, I don't think anyone has finished both. And so you can't apply.
I think so. That's all.
Okay. So rank is mandatory. I'll sorry about that. But tomorrow try again over the weekend. We'll remove the rank. And
That's all, sir. Thank you so
somebody
much,
asked me for
sir.
my email address. I just put that in the chat window here. Okay. For people on YouTube, it's ravi@csc.iitm.ac.in. I mean, you can find me by Googling me. Yeah. Somebody is asking, can I apply for multiple internships? You can't do that concurrently, but if you're applying one after the other, sure. Okay, fine. I think we should stop. And a lot of interesting questions. And is there any way that you can collect all these questions and then I can try and answer them offline? And if there is a way you can share it to the students, then that'd be good.
Yes, sir. We will try.
So thank you, guys, and I'm happy to see so many people actively asking questions and participating.
Thank you so much, sir. It has been such a great event from your experience.